So you want to teach English here in Italy. Welcome, welcome. You are in great company. However, there are a few things that we need to have a little bit of a chit chat about when it comes to teaching English, because there are some skills and qualities that are often overlooked or forgotten about that, in my very humble opinion, separate the great teachers from the below average ones. And in today's video, we're going to deep dive into those different aspects so that if you're really contemplating this career for yourself here in Italy, you can truly reflect and decide whether or not this is really going to be the right choice for you. Now, just to give you some context, I have been teaching English here in Italy for 6 years. So basically the entire time that I have spent living in Italy. I spent 2 years working at a Montessori school in Naples before transitioning during the pandemic to a private language school in Salerno, and now here I am in Palermo also teaching English. So I've got a fair bit of experience under my belt, but more than that, I have been able to identify and spot some key similarities that are shared across different cities and different regions, which gives me more confidence in saying that actually these skills and qualities that I'm going to talk about in today's video can be applicable to you wherever you may decide to teach in Italy. Now, this is not the first video I've done about teaching English. I've already filmed a video about how to find a job here in Italy. I filmed a video about the realities of teaching English here in Italy. You know I like to keep it real. And I also filmed a video about the ugly truth of working in Italy, because trust me, it is an education to work here in Italy. It needs its own manual. So yes, this video though, as I said, is a little bit different because we're talking about those overlooked, often forgotten skills and qualities that I think can really help you to decide whether or not this is a profession for you. Because a lot of people reach out to me on YouTube, on Instagram, and they're like, I have this qualification and I really want to teach English in Italy and blah, blah, blah. But I want to begin by saying, first of all, a qualification does not make a teacher. Like, let's be really clear, fundamentally clear. Having a teaching qualification does not mean you are a teacher. It just means that on paper, it says you can do the job, but it doesn't mean you are a teacher. Now, why do I say this? Because a lot of people hide behind their qualifications. I've got this, I've got this, I've got this. Wonderful, but have you got the ability to inspire, motivate and encourage a classroom full of students when they are not interested in the subject, find it really difficult, or have got other distractions going on in their lives? Like, that piece of paper that tells you you can teach cannot prepare you for some of those situations. The first skill that we're going to be talking about that you need to have is that of patience. Now, patience is something that is not easy for many people to have, especially when you are stressed and you're busy and you've got a heavy workload. It's very difficult sometimes to adopt patience when it comes to your students, to your school, to your colleagues, to parents, whoever it may be. But patience is a fundamental skill to adopt as a teacher. You need to have patience for your students. Because let me tell you, if you don't know already, Italian people have had a pretty dire experience of learning English up to now, particularly if they were taught in the state school system. English is notorious here in Italy for being badly taught, often by teachers who do not have a solid grasp of the language themselves or are simply just not interested in it. And as such, students leave school barely able to string a sentence together and either completely forget about the language for the rest of their lives until they are grown adults, or they then have to take up private courses to be able to really master the language and get better at it. So it's a pretty shocking experience that a lot of Italian people have had here in Italy. And so you've got to have some patience for your students, like young people especially. Young people don't have a great experience at school, 9 times out of 10. A lot of them don't enjoy school, or they don't enjoy the experiences they have with their teachers. Of course, it depends on the school, it depends on the subject, but there are some common themes that I often hear from many of my younger students. And so as a result, you've got to have patience for those students who maybe don't want to come to school motivated, can't be bothered to study, don't think they're any good at the language, don't think it's something that they really want to do. That's where you've got to display patience. You have to understand where they're coming from and the context behind their comments. When it comes to adults, you've got to have patience for lots of reasons. Firstly, a lot of adult learners are learning a language fresh, brand new for the first time in their adult lives. Take it from me, I'm an adult and it's taken me bloody forever to learn Italian. I totally get how challenging it can be to learn a language or any new skill when you're a grown adult, because guess what? Life gets in the way, you have many responsibilities, little free time. It's a totally different experience as to when you were a student or a child. So you have to have patience. You know, it may take longer for some students to really grasp what you're talking about or to understand, and they may make the same mistakes repeatedly, but you've got to have patience. You've also got to have patience because they too have had a terrible experience of English, predominantly up to now, and so they arrive with this kind of block within them, this fear of making mistakes. Now, I notice this a lot as a mother tongue teacher because a lot of students are petrified of making a mistake. They literally stay blocked because they would prefer to be perfect than to basically mess up. But let me tell you something, perfectionism does not exist when it comes to language learning. You learn through your mistakes. And so if you are willing to say a few things incorrectly now and again, or mess up completely the entire meaning of a sentence, you are probably more likely to learn than somebody who stays blocked because they want everything to be just right. There's also a sense sometimes of adult students feeling a little bit embarrassed about their lack of understanding and knowledge of the language itself. And sometimes this manifests in students translating things and repeating them back in order to sound a higher level than what they really are, or it manifests in students kind of feeling like they need to pretend that they have more knowledge than what they really do. These aspects all require patience, and so this is why it is a fundamental skill that you must have as a teacher. If you are an impatient person, teaching is not for you. Like, I'm telling it to you straight. You've also got to have patience with parents. This is more so if you are teaching young learners or teenagers, but essentially parents often have a whole heap of unrealistic expectations for their children. They often put a lot of pressure on their children, which adds to the fact that sometimes their kids are not motivated, they don't want to learn because they've got English and 1,000,001 other extracurricular activities to focus on. And also, a lot of the time, parents think they know what's best for their child and want to tell you how to do your job, when essentially it is just a lack of awareness and understanding of the course curriculum and the kind of content that their child is going to learn. So you do learn very quickly on that. Patience and clear communication are absolutely vital when you are communicating with parents of children, and rightly so, because I'm not going to lie, English courses here, private English courses here in Italy are not cheap. So, you know, people expect a lot and they have very high expectations when the price tag is the same, you know? So there's that. And also you need to have patience with the school establishment that you work for. A lot of patience, because you're going to have to adapt to working conditions, working procedures. You might have to be more flexible than what you're used to. You might have to deal with things not being quite as they may seem or appear. I've had plenty of experiences that, oh my goodness, I would never have had in the UK, but it's made me a stronger person. It's given me a lot more to talk about on this channel. You know, you've got to take the goodness from everything, but essentially you've got to have patience. And so this is why, number one, fundamental quality you must adopt if you want to become a teacher here in Italy: bucket loads of patience. The next thing that you need to really be aware of is kind of your empathy levels. If you are unable to put yourself in the shoes of your students, I really think you miss out on something very, very important. Now, a lot of students here in Italy, certainly in my entire 6 years that I've been teaching, I have found that probably 60 to 70% of my students have had problems with anxiety. Now, this ranges from young learners all the way up to adult learners. And it's not just anxiety with learning a language, it's anxiety with life in general. And so you have to be able to empathise with your student, to be able to adapt your teaching style to cater to your student's individual need. It's crucial, it's fundamental. And, you know, tied into having patience, you've got to be able to understand where your student is coming from. And this is why, like, you need to be able to listen. You need to be able to respond. You need to think about the language you're using and the way that you are communicating to that student. As a teacher, your role is fundamental, and you have a great responsibility that not many people really fully appreciate. And that's why I say, like, you know, even from myself and my own personal struggles that I have had learning Italian, I do feel in a way it's made me a better teacher, because I can empathise so much more with the students who are struggling with learning English, because I'm in their shoes, just in the reverse situation. And so, you know, you have to put yourself in the shoes of your students, understand a bit more about them, their struggles, and the things that make them tick, and use that to help to create an environment for them where they feel comfortable and where you can really help them to achieve their language goals. It's vital. Empathy is something that no certification will teach you. This is something you gain through life experience. So it's something you're going to constantly be working upon and evolving and growing, and it's probably one of the most important skills that you could ever have in life. You've also got to be passionate about what you do. Yes, yes. It's one thing to do a job for the paycheck. It's quite another to do it because you actually feel a connection with what you do. Teaching comes from the heart, not the head. You may think that it's not obvious that you're only doing a job as a teacher for the paycheck, but let me tell you, it emanates from every cell and fibre of your being. Like, artificial intelligence could do a better job than you if all you do is open a laptop, read what is in front of you like a robot, and have no sense of empathy, no compassion, no ability to hold a lesson without reading what's in front of you. You are not a teacher, you are a robot. And really, students deserve so much better. You've got to have passion for what you do. And this is why I say, like, you can't fake passion. You can't pretend to love your job and then be complaining and moaning about it at every given opportunity. You've got to have passion for what you do. And passion is something that you cannot take an exam in. It's got to be something that comes from the heart, and it's something that students pick up on as well. The amount of students I've had who will say to me, like, you know, thank you, like they mean it from the bottom of their heart. They're like, thank you, like you really care about what you do and about what you're teaching us. And that means a lot to me because it's true. Like, I don't go to work for the paycheck. Let me tell you, you're never going to become a millionaire off a teacher's paycheck here in Italy. But if you're not passionate about what you do everyone around you a huge disservice. Like, to have passion means you have an opportunity to really make a difference in another person's life. And you have an opportunity to create an environment that is second to none. When you are robotic and you just read what you have to read just to finish the day, to wait for another payday, you're no good to anyone. And I really wish more people would wake up to this fact that if you don't like your job, do something different, you know, like, please don't stay for the paycheck. It's so obvious to everyone, even if you don't think it is. Like, you know, if you can't be bothered to concentrate on what you're doing because you're on your phone or because you're distracted by what's going on around you, this is not the job for you. You've got to love what you do, even just a little bit, because if you don't, it's bloody obvious to everyone else. And especially when it comes to the private sector where, you know, language courses are not cheap, as I've said before, when people's money is at stake, you'll find that people are less forgiving when the quality is not there. And so you've got to find the passion for what you do. If you don't have it now, try to find something about what you do that you like. And, you know, if you're interested in becoming a teacher, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Make sure there's a part of the role that you are about to do that you actually think you're going to enjoy or benefit from or gain something from or learn from. It's crucial. And I really hope that, you know, this is the one thing you remember out of this entire video. Passion is everything. You've got to be inspiring. I think this is something that not a lot of people think about when they associate teaching with inspiration. Like, you know, you have to create a sense of curiosity within your students. Something that makes your students sit up and think, I can do this. You know, I will always say to my students before an exam, if you say you can or you can't, you're always right. Because a lot of students have massive amounts of self-doubt, and this ties into the anxiety problems that I was referring to before. And so I try to find a way to communicate to them that those words are going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I can't speak English, I'm terrible. Well, if you keep saying that to yourself enough times, that's what you're going to keep providing evidence of. You know, our brains are super, super, super powerful in this way. And I think to be an inspiration to your students is to show them something different, show them an alternative, show them what's possible, instill in them something that they've probably never experienced in their entire life. You've also got to have adaptability. Let me tell you, you can be super organised, script an entire lesson, 200 pages of lesson plan. You can have everything in front of you on the computer screen ready to read out like a robot. Let me explain something to you and make it super, super clear. Life happens, things go wrong. Essentially, you've got to be ready to adapt, because guess what? You could have a beautiful lesson planned and then you have a class of kids that arrive that are just in a really terrible mood. They've had a really bad day at school, they don't want to learn, they're distracted, they're agitated. There's no sense trying to push ahead with that lesson. You've got to think on your feet and do something different. And what about, you know, like if somebody asks you questions about something completely unrelated to the topic at hand? If you're just reading off a screen like a robot, you don't have those answers pre-prepared. What are you going to do? You have to be adaptable. Life is this. We cannot predict life in the same way that you cannot fully predict a lesson to a T. You need to know what you're going to teach, but then you have to give yourself some room for flexibility. There may be some things you have to tweak or change, some extra activities that you add to make the lesson more engaging, or you spend a bit longer on one activity than you'd originally prepared. So you have to be able to do this, because this is the way life is. And if you try to force something when everything around you is telling you it's not a good idea, it's not going to give you the desired results. And so you absolutely need to be able to adapt and change your lesson accordingly, depending on the mood of the students, depending on what happens. This is life. You've got to move with it, basically. And the next skill that I actually think kind of ties everything up really nicely in a big red bow is that of personal responsibility. You have to be able to take personal responsibility for yourself and your role as a teacher. Being a teacher carries one of the greatest responsibilities I think I've ever experienced, because here you are inspiring someone in front of you, young or old, to help them to improve themselves in some way, to give them a window of opportunity when it comes to career prospects or education or a new lease of life in some respects. You have a great responsibility, and so many teachers forget this. They forget about the language they use and the way that they interact with their students. They forget that every word they say will create a lasting impression with their student. Consider, I've had students tell me in the past they've had teachers at their state schools tell them that they'll never pass an exam, that they're really terrible at the language, that they're no good. Like, those kinds of things impact the students. I've had to deal with the fallout of those comments on those students who have lacked in confidence as a result of being told that repeatedly for a period of time. And so, you know, as a teacher, you have to take great responsibility for everything. Personal responsibility for the lessons that you create and the style of teaching that you deliver. Personal responsibility for the language and the words that you use and the way that you can empathise and connect with your students. Personal responsibility for being passionate about what you deliver. Being able to really make your students feel like you care, you've got their back, and you want them to do well. And personal responsibility as well for being able to listen, to understand, to help. As a teacher, we are not ever just a teacher. We are a counsellor. We are sometimes a babysitter. We are many, many, many different things. We are never, ever, ever just a teacher. And so you have to be able to wear many different hats, but deliver something that is going to have a lasting impact on your students. So before you say, I want to be a teacher in Italy, please be really, really sure of your decision, because there are many substandard teachers here already. And I don't want you to be that. I want you to be one of the exceptional ones. I'll see you in the next video.